Moving to our world lead, a David and Goliath story where Goliath comes back for revenge. An environmental lawyer who won a historic $9.5 billion judgment against Chevron oil company in the 90s is now heading to federal prison. Steven Donziger accused Chevron of dumping oil in the Amazon rainforest. For years, Chevron has been going after Donziger, accusing him of concocting evidence. It's a complicated story. CNN's Jessica Schneider is here to try to help make sense of it all. Jessica, what is the extent of Chevron's legal retaliation here?
Jake, this long legal saga began when Chevron was ordered to pay $9.5 billion by a court in Ecuador in 2011. After that, the oil giant set its sights on the lawyer who originally brought the case against them, Steve Donziger. Donziger's lawyer tells me that Chevron's legal team has buried Donziger in litigation over the past decade, filing a lawsuit against him for fraud in the Ecuador case, which Chevron did win. And then in a separate but related case, Donziger was ordered to hand over his electronic devices like his cell phone and computer to the court. Donziger refused, citing attorney-client privilege. And when
they offered 0 hours of coverage to Steven Donziger's case when it was going on, and I hate to admit it, I didn't really fucking cover it either. I mean, I tracked it, I followed it. Shouts out to Chapo. I think Kyle Kalinske talked about it too beforehand. Like when he was under house arrest, they did multiple interviews with him. But like, I can't get to all the fucking news. I'm simply one person, right? He was on the Majority Report. He was on Democracy Now! Recently. But wild to consider that like CNN, New York Times, none of these fucking, not a single one of these like big outlets, mainstream media outlets talked about this at all. And now that he's going to fucking jail, they're like, yeah, I guess it's time to cover it now. Not that it would have changed much, to be honest. That's bullshit. I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that at all. No way. I'm sure you covered it. I got to know it from you. I mean, I've like touched on it, but I never did like an extensive deep dive or interviewed him. You know what I mean? So that's not, it's not like I can't take credit for that at all. Anyway, the mainstream media publicly covering just one of the grossest examples of like the court system attacking a fucking human rights lawyer. Attacking a fucking human rights lawyer that would be gigantic fucking news.
Prosecutors in the Southern District of New York refused to charge him with criminal contempt. Donziger's lawyer tells me that a federal judge stepped in to appoint a private law firm to prosecute the case. The law firm was Seward and Kissel, which has represented many oil companies over the years, including Chevron. They did not respond to my request for comment. Eventually, Donziger was found guilty of contempt in 2019, and he has been under house arrest.
Yeah. So there's a fucking psychotic judge who turned around and hired, because like his case originally was dropped and there wasn't enough to like literally prosecute him. So they just like hired a private firm to prosecute him.
Arrest while his appeal moves forward. But on Tuesday, the appeals court denied Donziger's request to stay out on bail, and he was ordered to report to federal prison while his appeal plays out. Donziger tweeted a photo saying goodbye to his son yesterday, and several members of Congress have actually come to his defense. They're asking President Biden and Attorney General Merrick Garland to step into the case. So far, the Justice Department has not commented on this case. Donziger's lawyers, they will be before the Second Circuit Appeals Court November 30th, arguing that the appointment of that law firm to prosecute him was unlawful, and that will be Donziger's next chance at getting released from prison after what he says has been a long fight to silence him and other activists working against the oil industry. Now, Chevron has not responded to my request for comment, and actually Donziger's lawyer tells me they still have not paid that $9.5 billion judgment against them, and that's something that Donziger had been working on trying to enforce at the same time that Chevron was burying him with legal fights. Jake?
Anyway, here's the Democracy Now! Video on it. Let's this will detail
is Democracy
it a
Now!,
little bit better.
democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. The environmental human rights lawyer, Steven Donziger, is reporting to jail today after a federal appellate court rejected his request for bail pending his appeal. Earlier this month, Steve Donziger was sentenced to 6 months in prison for contempt of court, a misdemeanor. Donziger has already spent over 2 years under house arrest after being targeted by the oil giant Chevron. The case stems from Steve's role in suing Chevron on behalf of 30,000 Amazonian indigenous people for dumping 16 billion gallons of oil into their ancestral land in the Ecuador.
By the way, this is like the most like incredible pairing too, for the record. Not just EPA's authority, SCOTUS has agreed to take up Congress's constitutional authority to delegate to the EPA the power to regulate greenhouse gas emissions. Supreme Court has now agreed to consider limiting EPA's authority to curb greenhouse gases from power plants. A holding that this particular delegation is unconstitutional would not formally prevent Congress from passing a more specific constitutional delegation or regulating climate change directly, but everyone, including the justices, knows why such reforms would be unlikely. The EPA, by the way, is already like a fucking flailing, gutless institution, okay? So,
Ecuador and Amazon.
I mean, this is literally the same Supreme Court that also said it's okay for Nestle to take advantage of contracted out labor that happens to be slave labor. So, you know, new stuff every day.
10 years ago, Ecuador's Supreme Court ordered Chevron to pay $18 billion. The landmark ruling was seen as a major victory for the environment and corporate accountability. But Chevron refused to pay or clean up the land. Instead, it launched a legal attack targeting Donziger. In July, a federal judge found him guilty of 6 counts of criminal contempt of court after he refused to turn over his computer and cell phone. In an unusual legal twist, the judge appointed a private law firm with ties to Chevron to prosecute Donziger after federal prosecutors declined to bring charges. Amnesty International recently called for his immediate release, saying he was being arbitrarily detained.
Yeah, these NGOs are so fucking, like, they have no power. It's always so funny. Like, Amnesty International is, like, wagging their fucking finger, you know? And it's like, I guess they're doing the best thing they can. And there's not much that they can do beyond that. But that's why I always fucking laugh when people are like, oh, well, there's people doing good work. Like, look at that. It's like, dude, it's literally inconsequential, okay? Our fucking ironclad institutions are operating in the exact same way that they're supposed to be. And you know, these NGOs, Amnesty International, all this other stuff, like the ones that aren't like completely corrupted by the State Department, okay? And a lot of them are. They just like, they can't do anything. They have no power. It's like the fucking UN, you know what I mean? It's just powerless, completely fucking powerless. Which is why it's always laughable whenever the case isn't about the EPA. What Vladek is saying is that they find the delegation of power unconstitutional. That would mean every delegation is unconstitutional to every administrative agency in the federal government. What? That is like, that's insane. What? So fucking no Congress. No federal authority whatsoever. That's like the most states' rights argument that you could fucking push for. Holy shit, dude. Fuck this country. I mean, seriously. For the record, here's Steven Donziger talking about, to be clear, the judge who put me under house arrest, Loretta Preska, is the leader of the Chevron-funded Federalist Society. A Chevron law firm is prosecuting me. Chevron lawyers are witnesses, and the charging judge has investments in Chevron. The Federal Society gratefully acknowledges the following firms and corporations for their generous support of the annual dinner. Gold sponsors: Chevron Corporation, Google, Sullivan and Cromwell LLP, Verizon, Wilmer Hale. Silver sponsors: Alliance Defending Freedom. Only federal authority to constitutional delegation or direct oversight by Congress. Yep. Nice. So, you know.
Hassan Becker. Can't make up that name. That's his name. That's his name. Hassan Becker. Can't make up that name. That's his name. That's his name.